Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Chasing Ghosts. This is the video series where I talk about those hard to find, those impossible to find comics, those really, really tough books that you just don't find when you go to your shops every Wednesday. These are some books you got to do some legwork. You got to get lucky in finding them sometimes because they are low printed, rare, and just generally difficult comic books to find. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see what difficult books I have for you this week, just hang out for a few seconds after the intro and I will be right back. All right, so for this week, I was kind of interested in doing another throwback episode. I was looking back at the videos I did 3 years ago, and I covered a lot of books that I still am curious about and thought it would be interesting to see some updates on them. So I decided to go that way with it this week again. Particularly, I grabbed the selection of Journey into Mystery books, those hard-to-find variants. There's a lot of 1 in 50s. There is one 1 in 20 in the bunch, but I decided to do the end-of-the-run Journey into Mystery incentive variants because, again, there's some cool covers, and they are really, really tough to find. So, with that said, let's see exactly how tough they are to find as we go through this list of books, starting off with our first one. Oh boy, let's see what Blinky has for us with our first book, and it is going to be the 1 in 20 incentive. So, generally going to be the highest printed of this bunch. Let's see how easy this one is to track down. This is Journey into Mystery number 646, the Phil Noto variant from November of 2012. This book, at the time, again, using Comicron's estimated print run numbers, there was an estimated print run number of just under 23,000. So if you do that quick ratio math of dividing it by 20, you get 1,144 copies. Is that an exact number? No. Is that a correct number? Absolutely not. It's the best general kind of ballpark number we can get based off of what we know and the information available, though. So I'm just giving it to you for context. Do not use it as something written in stone. That is not the exact number, either of them. They're estimated, they're guesses, again, just to give you a framework on which you can start looking at these things. Now, what we do know is what do we have in the CGC census? And right now in the CGC census, we do have only 7 copies for this book. There are 498s, 296s, and a 94. Does that mean it's that rare, or are people just not grading this one? If it were me, I think it might be the latter, as we're about to see. Now, when I did this show 3 years ago, the census numbers for this same book were 6. And I put them side by side, so you can see the difference between 3 years ago and now is somebody added a 9.6 to the census. That's it. 3 years, only one of these has been graded? That's kind of crazy to think about it. But does that mean it's that hard to find? Well, let's look into it. When I look back at the last 3 months of sales, I didn't find any. So nobody was picking this book up. So again, does this mean this is a ghost and it's that hard to find? Well, when I looked at what was available, here are 3 examples, but I actually found close to a dozen options if you wanted to buy this particular book. So just because the census is low doesn't mean it's rare. Just because the print run numbers tell you this or that doesn't mean anything. Again, this is all just information. You do with it what you want. I just find it interesting to look into these things. But with that said, you can find this book raw for 25, 40, 50 bucks out there for this 1 in 20. It's still not like a cheap variant, and it's not like easy. You're not going to have this in every shop you go to. But if you wanted to purchase one online, you do have your pick of the litter because there are a few options out there. Now, since there are a few options out there, we know how this goes. And this is just going to be a hard-to-find book. We're not going to consider it a ghost. So let's just move on, as you can get this one if you want it. But again, it's a pretty cool cover, and it is right near the end of that Journey into Mystery, that SIF run. The regular cover A's have pretty cool Jeff DeCall covers, but these are the incentive variants for that run. Now, Before we continue on, I just want to remind any of you out there who haven't tried Whatnot yet, use the link down below, sign up. First-time users, you get a free $15 to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want. No strings attached. You help the channel out. You get yourself something nice with your free 15 bucks, and it's really, got nothing to lose just to give it a try. So just want to remind all of you out there who haven't tried it yet, give it a shot down below. Use that link. Now, let's see what we have next with our next option here. Now, up next, we do have our next book in the run. This is going to be Journey into Mystery 647. This, however, goes up a bit. This is the Philip Tan variant from December 2012. So again, next month, just progression naturally. But this one jumped up to a 1 in 50 incentive. Our last book was 1 in 20, which meant that for every 20 copies ordered, shops could order 1 copy of the variant. This is a 1 in 50, so for every copy a particular LCS ordered, they could order 1 copy of this particular variant. That's what these ratios mean, in case you weren't aware. I know there's still some newer viewers and newer comic collectors out there who might not know what we mean when we talk about ratios and incentives, so I think it helps every once in a while just to explain it. With that said, going back again to our friends at Comic-Con, the print run number back then was 22,514, which would give us an estimated incentive of about 450. Again, we know that's not how it exactly works, but again, it's just a ballpark number. With that said, let's look into the census right now for this particular book and see how many we got. And we actually do have 13 copies for this Philip Tan variant. We got 11 9/8s and a pair of 9/6s. When I did this exercise 3 years ago, there were a few less. Not a ton less, but I only had 10 back then. And it seems like we added a pair of 9/8s and we added 1 9/6 over the last 3 years. So that's still only adding 1 book per year for this variant. 1 getting graded on average per year. That's not a lot. Just saying. Does that mean it's that rare? Or does it just mean that nobody cares and they're not sending it graded? Well, we saw what the answer was for the last book. Let's take a look into this one, because the story could be different. Now, for the last 3 months on eBay, were any sold? I found a pair. 1 sold for 50 bucks. 1 sold at auction with 21 bids for $151.22. So, not a cheap book. And even that $50 sale, I bet you if I look into it, there was probably an offer accepted for a different amount. That's generally what shows when there is an auction with a best offer option. They will just show the sale being completed as that starting bid. That's not necessarily always the case. I didn't want to do that extra bit of legwork, though, to find out what was accepted. The point being is 2 copies sold. And sold for over ratio. That's the quick story. That's the general idea I want to pass along to you. Now, as far as what's available right now, I did manage to find 2 copies. Only 2, but I did find 2. And the 2 available are not like the others. The 2 listed is a raw, looking for $895 with the best offer option. And it does have 15 watchers, mind you. So it's not something that's just sitting there. Like, people are watching it. They're keeping an eye on it. They're curious. And then there is another one out there listed for $1,000, but that is a CGC 9.8 copy. So that's one of those 11 copies out there that's listed for sale, $1K. So definitely not cheap. But since we actually do have 2 copies listed and not 1 or none, you know the rules. This one is not going to be a ghost. This one can be caught if you want it. Granted, only 2 options right now, but still more than 1. That's our story here for 647. So let's keep it going and check out our next one. Now, with our next book here, we've got issue 648, right? So 648, we've got another variant, another incentive to take a look at. This one is done by Nick Klein from January 2013. So a dozen years ago, this book came out, and pretty fun cover. I kind of like the last one a little bit better than this one, but still, it's a decent cover for a 1 in 50. This one had a print run. Again, you notice the trend here as the series was ending, print runs going down. So a little under 21,000 for this particular book, which would lower our incentive to possibly 417. Again, ballpark numbers. CGC census on this one is actually a bit less than the last book. This one only has 8 in it right now. There are 5 9/8s, a 9/6, a 9/4, and a 9/2, and that's it. So there's only 8 copies currently graded for this particular variant in the CGC census. And when I did this 3 years ago, there were 7. So all we added in the last 3 years is a 9/2. So one got submitted in the last 3 years, and they only got the 9.2. Oof. So once again, what does that mean when we look at all these things? Well, we look at what's sold in the last few months. I found one sell again for $50 or best offer. I didn't go into the digging to see what could have been accepted, but that's what it's showing as. It's at $50. And if they did sell it for 50, I think that was a good deal considering the available copies, and I do say copies because I did find two, are searching for a little bit more than $50. We have a raw that's listed for 223, and then we've got a 9.8 that's looking for $500. A little bit inconsistent when we're looking at some of these asking prices, the graded copies. You saw the last book, it's generally the same numbers, generally the same rarity, if you will. The last one was looking for $1,000. This one's looking for 500. Again, I like the last book a little bit better as far as cover art goes. Does Philip Tan have a larger following than Nick Klein? I don't know if either of them have a huge following. It's not like we're talking about a Jim Lee or a Adam Hughes cover. Not to besmirch either artist. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, what is the difference between the two, and why is there such a price difference? Just kind of curious. Either way, they're sitting there at that asking price, not selling at that price. So with that said, we've got two copies, and that means, again, we can't call this one a ghost today. With that said, let's keep it going. That was 648. And I believe last time out, this one might have only had one copy listed. So 3 years ago, there might have only been one. So I think this one did get that ghost moniker. You'd have to go back to episode, I think it's 38 of Chasing Ghosts to see what I'm talking about. The link will be down below if you want to watch the old one. But again, I thought it'd be interesting to look at some of these books 3 years later to see what actually changed. With that said, if any of you out there need to protect your collectibles, you need your bags, your boards, your short boxes, long boxes, CGC boxes, top loaders, whatever you need to keep your comics and your collectibles safe, whether they be cards, etc., you can order from BCW using my link below. And if you use my code RENA10, you save 10% off your entire order. It sucks having to buy, protection for your collectibles, bags and boards. It's not a fun purchase, but we all have to do it. You might as well save some money while you do it. So use that code RENA10 to save yourself a few bucks because it doesn't hurt to save a few dollars. Now, with that said, we've got 2 books left. Let's see what Clyde has for us this time out. We're going to move on to the next issue in the run, 649. So here we go. Issue 649, yet another incentive variant. This one done by Jorge Molina from February of 2013. Pretty cool cover. I kind of like it with the Norse symbols behind her. You got the ravens flying through the sky and some, the ships down below. It's kind of a cool image. I kind of like this one. But it is another one at 50. Print run, again, ticking down a little bit lower, closer to 20,000, which lowers our estimated incentive down closer to 400 at about 401. Ballpark number once again. CGC census, however, that isn't a ballpark. That is a solid number. And we can see that there are only 5. So for issue 649, we have only 5 copies currently in the CGC census with 4 9/8 and a single 9/6. Now, 3 years ago, what was the census looking like? Well, 3 years ago, it was only 3. So we had 3 9/8s at that time. So in the last 3 years, we've only added 2 copies to the census. We added the 9/6 and 1 more 9/8. I find that kind of interesting. 3 years, only 2 submissions of this book. That's all we got. I don't know. I find it interesting, but you let me know if you don't care too much about the CGC census numbers. I do find it fascinating. With that said, let's go to what sold the last 3 months. Down below, I found a single sale, and it was one of those 9.8s, and it did sell for $340, which is a nice chunk of change for a 1 in 50 incentive. Not quite what the asking prices are for the other prior books, but still a decent amount of money. However, when I looked into the listings to see how many copies of this book were available, I was actually surprised that I found 3. Yep, 1, 2, 3. I found 2 raws looking for $850 and $895 respectively. And then I found one of those other 9/8s out there that's only looking for $440. I'm just saying, if I was one of the sellers for those raw copies, you might want to reconsider the pricing, considering somebody can buy a 9/8 for $440. You might be reaching a little too far right now. I get it. You can leave it up there. Once that 440 sells, you're the only game in town. Then you can play play the market and do your negotiating. I get it. All I'm saying is for right now, you're going to have to wait until that 440 gets cleared, because I doubt anybody's going to come barking unless you're really down to sell it for like $200 or something like that, and you're going to take a real low ball offer. But that all said, that's what we got out there on the market right now, at least 3 copies. So once again, we still don't have a Ghost, and I'm through 4 books. Maybe we can get one with the last one. I've told you guys before, I don't know the answer to the questions before I start this. I just come up with a topic, I come up with a selection of books, then I do the research, and I give you the results as I find them. This is a snapshot in time, a moment in time type of show. So, did it 3 years ago. You can see what it was then. I think there were 2 of these were ghosts back then, and we do it again 3 years later. It's another snapshot in time. Story could be different. And with that said, we have one more book left, one more potential ghost left. So let's see what it is. And it is the final issue of the run of Incentives. The series still carried on for another half dozen issues, I think, or so, but they stopped doing the incentives on issue 650. So with issue 650, that was the final 1 in 50 incentive. This one, oh, I'm sorry, that's not Chris Bacalo. That's the wrong artist. I'm sorry, I forgot to update that. All right, there we go. We're back on track. Through the magic of editing, I've corrected my mistakes and have this slide deck updated. This particular cover was not done by Chris Bacalo. This was done by Daniel Acuna in March of 2013. Now, this 1 in 50, again, had a little bit of a lower print run than the last, going down to about 19,000, which takes our estimated incentive under the 400 number down to maybe about 380. Again, ballpark numbers, please. Don't hold me to those numbers. It is what it is. I've explained it many times. But with that said, in the CGC census for our last selection here, we do have 7 current copies. There are 498s, 196, 194, and an 85, just randomly thrown in there. But 3 years ago, when I did this exercise, we only actually had 4. So we've added 1 per year again. So 3 new copies in the census since 2022, and one of them is a 9.8, one of them was the 9.6, and the other was the 9.4. Because back in 2022, we had 3 9.8s, and we still had that 8.5 that's sitting out there. But with that said, what's on the market, or what's the market done on this book the last few months? Well, here we go. This one, no action. Haven't seen any sales on this particular variant the last 3 months. So no idea what the market might pay for it. Nor do I know what the market is going to ask for this book, because unlike the last few books, there are none listed right now. None listed? Well, what does that mean? Well, finally, we've got one, folks. This one gets away from us. So this is going to be a ghost for you to chase if you want to go out there and hunt this one, because right now on the market, they're an unlisted. So good luck to you. And with that, I found this fun to go back and look at these old books. I might do more throwbacks because I kind of like it. I kind of like seeing where things were and where they are now. Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. Or do you just want to see me try to reach for some random newer variants and to see how tough they are? It's more difficult to do more recent books because we don't have any estimated print run numbers to even guess. But I don't know. You let me know what topics and what angles you find more interesting in the comments down below. So before we move on and wrap this thing up, let's look at our results. If you've been following along, most of them had at least 2 copies or more. So most of these were just hard to find books. Whereas the only one we can call a ghost this week is our last option, that issue 650. That was the only one that had no copies out there on the market currently. Now, when I did this 3 years ago, as I said, it was issue 646. The Nick Klein had no copies listed at that time. Now we've got 2. So it's not a ghost 3 years later. But this book, 650, was a ghost back then, and it's a ghost now. So this is our only one I feel comfortable in calling a ghost today. So that's what we got with our little look back into February of 2022 with our Journey into Mystery high ratio incentives. So until next time, that was Chasing Ghosts. Again, let me know what angles you guys like in the comments down below, and I'll see you all soon with some more content. All right, later.